Hey, this is John Hope Bryant, and this is Money and Wealth on the Black Effect Network on the iHeart Radio podcast series, Money and Wealth for season two. And I've always wanted to do this episode in general, but recently a Straight Talk Live video that I did, well, actually, it was an interview that I did. Um, a podcast interview I did for the Texas Black Expo when I was speaking there was part of it was taken out in a clip, and the clip went viral and it has millions of views just on Instagram about one topic in particular. This topic: are blacks and black Africans and black Caribbeans the same or different? And my answer, I like, I'm straightforward. My answer is yes, they're different. We are different. We're the same. We all come from Africa. Africa is the source of everybody, by the way. All human life originated from the African continent. We're all Africans, okay? The sun was more direct. Um, I love to joke about this just to cut the racial tensions uh, so we can stop arguing about stupid stuff. But in Africa, the sun is sub-Saharan African direct, and for thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years. And so black Africans are beautiful, this beautiful hue, this pigmentation of their skin resists um, intense heat, absorbs it. And we don't, black Africans don't get skin cancer. Their hair is kinky, so it absorbs it absorbs the heat rays before it goes in the softest part of your body, which is over your brain, and dissipates. And the nose is wide to cool the air as a natural air conditioner before that heated air goes into your lungs, and so on and so forth. And so blacks thrive and survive and have modified their not modified, have adjusted to sub-Saharan Africa. And as you get farther up on the African continent, the sun is less direct. And as you get into what they call North Africa, you have basically olive skin blacks, and you cross this little puddle of water, the Mediterranean, and you get into southern Europe, where you have Italians and Spanish and the French Mediterranean, and they are olive skin with loose curls. That's the sun over thousands and tens of thousands of years is less direct. Literally the hair is unfurling, right? Adjusting to the environment. You get into Central Europe, and people are what you might call Caucasian white, if you want to call it that. But if you go to the Nordic countries, um, they make people in Central Europe look dark. Now let's go back to Africa. I've mentioned our nose is wider. I mentioned that we have kinky hair and the purpose of all that. And I didn't mention why we have big lips. I don't know, but everybody wants them. Okay. I just wanted to say that because it was funny. And so as you go into the Nordic countries, you get to this area, and it's very cold. I went to go visit my friend, the Crown Prince of Norway, a few years ago, and it was December, and the lady who picked me up, one of the security personnel, oh, so sorry for the delay, going through passport control, so on and so forth. Would you like to go to fishing with us tomorrow? So, or swimming with us tomorrow? It was December now. Heck no. It's freezing out here. I got on 3 parkas, a sweater, a beanie. This lady got on a t-shirt and short pants talking about, isn't it nice out? So she has long hair to cover her ears so her ears doesn't get cold. Her skin absorbs cold weather. Her nose is narrow to heat the air before it goes into her lungs. God has adjusted her to that environment. By the way, if you remove the water between the North American and South American continent and Africa and Europe, and you look at that landmass, click, click, right? It was once one. So this whole racial thing is we just arguing over stupid stuff. That's not what this podcast is about. But let me just sort of neutralize that as an issue. And happy to go into that separately if you want to obsess about our uninteresting differences some more. Let's now talk at minute 5 here in this podcast about what went viral and why it's relevant to your economy and our economic future, and why I think it should matter to you, and the opportunity for you, because rainbows only follow storms. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. So I have said something pretty um, bold, but I don't think it is. Are Black Africans, Black Caribbeans, and African Americans different? Yes. Even though I just told you we come from the same place. Um, black, these are generalizations, but they tend to stick. African Americans have, relatively speaking, a higher self confidence and a lower self esteem, because we higher self confidence because we succeeded in the biggest market economy on the planet. All right, we killed it. And if we say something's cool, it's cool in Taipei. If we say something's cool, it's cool in North Korea. Right? It's cool anywhere. We have created culture, in a defined culture all around the world. But because of the legacy of slavery, our self-esteem tends to be, and Jim Crow, our self-esteem tends to be lower. I'll get into why in a moment. Our Black African and Black Caribbean friends tend to have higher self-esteem and lower levels of confidence. Why is that? They experienced slavery for much lower, shorter periods of time, relatively speaking. Now, some absolutists will say, no, John, that's not true. Those in Cuba, which is, by the way, technically Latin America, those in Cuba and those in Brazil experienced it for longer. Yes, on a linear timeline, yes, but not the brutal, institutional, bad capitalism model of American slavery. I'm going to get to that in a moment. It matters. So all people experienced in the Caribbean and Latin America. There were slaves, by the way, in Latin America before there were ever slaves in the United States, by the way, or and certainly much larger numbers. But it was institutionalized as a commercial business with machinery and bad capitalism here in the U.S. And so this affected our self-esteem. Okay, so this let's break some eggs first. People say, "Oh, black folks, you're stupid. Black Americans, you're lazy." Really? Knock it off. Hold on. So wait. So the 1600s was an agricultural age, and the crops of tobacco, cotton, etc., were just booming. And where that crop took off really was in the fertile soil of the American South. Yes, Caribbean, yes, Latin America. But it was all the things lined up in the American South. But it was hot, it was humid, it was the soil would die easily, and no one knew how to work this soil or could work in this soil. Who are the geniuses of the land? This is not a trick question. Africans. I just told you, the sun is direct in Africa. We're used to hot, and we're used to working in these untenable environments, surviving, thriving. We've been doing so much with so little for so long, we can almost do anything with nothing. We're great at surviving and thriving. And so we were geniuses of the land. We could take dead soil and bring it back to life. So folks went halfway around the world, not because they hated you, not because you were lazy, but because you were agricultural geniuses. Please understand this. You were geniuses. You are geniuses of the land. To this day, Africa is the largest untapped natural resource in the world. In the world, the African continent. I will be doing a podcast just on that topic coming up next. So, or soon, shall I say. I want to break this up so you get a little bit of everything. So in my podcast series. So they brought us here, and so it's 12.5 million, give or take, slaves, people who are enslaved, right? About 2 million or so died, killed, sacrificed in the Middle Passage. About 10 million or so get to this hemisphere. Here's some incredible numbers. Most of them go to the Caribbean or to Latin America. Only 350,000, give or take, African slaves come into North America. This is stunning. This number is minuscule. So all the other places took slaves in, and the numbers over time dissipated, right? And it went from slavery to indentured servitude or something else. Um, in America, they mechanized it. They with the cotton gin and these things were created. Slavery was a dying industry, and it got mechanized and rejuvenated to the point where half of all American exports were tied to cotton by the mid 1840s or 1850s. And that was the economic engine for America and the export for around the world. It touched everything. It touched Wall Street. In fact, Wall Street was born in this regard in the South. Montgomery, Alabama, and other Alabama towns and Mississippi towns is where Wall Street started. Don't trust me, look it up for yourself. These major Wall Street firms had offices in Montgomery, Alabama. The wealthiest city in the world per capita was Natchez, Mississippi in the 1800s. Yes, that's not a misquote. African slaves were worth double railroads, were the most valuable asset in the country for a long time. We built it all for free. Okay, so now you got this big brother. You bring him over here. He's an agricultural genius. You need his talent. He knows how to take this dead soil, bring it back to life, rejuvenate it. It create this crop which turns into economic gold. But you don't need his attitude. You can't have him pushing back on you. He's twice your size, and he's built for battle. So you destroy his hope. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? You destroy his hope. You take his family members and you separate them and you sell the children off in different directions. Okay. By the way, here's good definition between good capitalism and bad capitalism. Good capitalism is where I benefit and you benefit more. An entrepreneur creating a comb that combs your hair, and then somebody another merchant in free enterprise finds the right price point where you find more value than cost. You buy that comb because it provides value to unkink your hair. That's good capitalism. I benefit, you benefited more. Everybody won. Bad capitalism is where I benefit and you pay a price for it. This is an example of bad capitalism times 1,000. Wasn't personal. Well, it was personal too, but it wasn't primarily personal. Nobody brought you halfway around the world because they hated you. This was about business, just bad business. And this will become crystal clear before this podcast is over. To anybody who likes math, I like math, it doesn't have an opinion. And I'm going to prove before this podcast is over that race, while incredibly destabilizing, racism is real. Racism is like rain. It's either falling someplace or it's gathering. So you might as well get out an umbrella and a color you like and start strolling through it because it's not going to change. So we must. So it's real, right? But race is actually not the primary issue. And I'll explain that because I'm going to unpack race as part of this discussion. White, black, the whole thing, all in the course of an hour, just to prove how simple this is and how people have been hiding the ball from you in plain sight and playing on our depression and our whatever else you want to call it. So Black Africans came here with all this chutzpah. This big dude is sitting there and they have to destroy his spirit, not his body. They need his body. They sell the kids into different directions. So now his hope is gone. His wife is there for him to protect. They hold him down while they abuse her. And they abuse her and hold him down until he stops fighting back. Now he's lost his ability to protect the one he loves. So now his self-esteem has been destroyed. Now it's time to put in work. And now you've got human machinery, which was the point. And this was a systemic effort to create machinery of the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. And this went from 350,000 to 4 million. This is the only place, America, where we manufactured slaves. Every place else, slaves came in and the numbers went down over time. And it's notable that in Latin America, by the way, um, the person who pushed the Spanish out of Mexico was a former black slave who was part black, part mestizo, Aztec Indian, uh, Mexican, Spanish, Latino, Hispanio, and black combination. He led an effort to push the the European colonizers at that time out of Mexico. So much so they made him president. Yes, the second president in Mexico in 1829, I believe it was. was of African descent, a freedom fighter who outlawed slavery 40 years before Abraham Lincoln, just under 40 years before Abraham Lincoln. Yes, this is a whole nother thing. If you want me to go deep on this, let me know in the comments when you see this outtakes, and I'll be happy to break it down. His name is Guerrero, the only man in Mexico to have a state named after him is Guerrero State. And by the way, little side note here, he outlawed slavery, and the one area that was making money on slavery so was enraged by his efforts. They r- removed themselves from Mexico, and that was an area that was called Texas. It became the state of Texas, and Texas literally was created. And I love Texas. I just came from Texas. I have plenty of friends in Texas. I love hanging out in Texas. I'm not hating on Texas. I'm just giving you the facts that literally Texas was created because it was able to pursue slavery for another 20, 30, 40 years before slavery was banned in the Civil War. But this was the reason that Texas left Mexico, and this was the reason for indirectly the Mexican American War, and this was the reason for the Alamo battle and all that stuff. American citizens were taking citizenship in Mexico, not the other way around. People weren't coming here; we were going there because of the economic activity, the freedom, the land, etc., and the endorsement of slavery until Guerrero put his foot down, and they ultimately killed him. By the way, so another story for another time. So now you have all this economic activity going on in the southern states. It's based on this bad business model. And the result of that, after slavery and Jim Crow, is that Black folks uh, had, I believe, a devastated self esteem. So if I don't like me, I'm not going to like you. Explain so much. If I don't feel good about me, I'm not going to feel good about you. If I don't respect me, don't expect me to respect you. If I don't love me, I don't have a clue how to love you. If I don't have a purpose in my life, I'll make your life a living hell. Whatever goes around comes around. So you have this brilliance now um, that is a bit of a lost soul that it hasn't healed. But we are now in the biggest economy on the planet, and the miracle of this story is we go from this slavery story to the president of the United States of America. Can I get an amen? President Barack Obama. That we have these heroes and sheroes that are symbols all around the world. Jay-Z, LeBron, Robert F. Smith, the entrepreneur, Reginald Lewis. I mean, the Oprah Winfrey. All these heroes and sheroes from all walks of life. Gail King, from every corner of society who are just killing it on a global scale in spite of what I just told you. Pretty amazing. We have mastered culture and cool all around the world. The problem is other folks have mastered capitalism and commerce. That's a mic drop, by the way. So we just need to stop just rocking the mic and start owning it. But you can't own it unless you understand that somebody else doesn't wants to distract you with being in entertainment alone. So I love my entertainment friends who now say, "Let me be a Johnny. Show me how to be a businessman," because it's a show business. It's the business of show. It's the sports business. It's a business of sports. Back to the topic. So now you have Black folks who have this incredible confidence because we're competent. You've shown you're competent that inspires confidence naturally. So you have high confidence but lower self-esteem, which unfortunately can create things like crab in the barrel, trust issues, and all that stuff that we all know so much about. If you're African American, your head should be nodding right now. And I think that the majority of African Americans are clinically undiagnosed depressed. It's the one thing I can't prove. I don't have any data around it, but I just whenever I talk to people, they're like, "Yeah, that's real." And we never healed. This country didn't heal after the Civil War. We didn't say that the Confederacy was bad, uh, and that this is a nation of under God of all of us. And we know that we won the Civil War. People moved on, and in many ways, you still have the philosophy of the Confederacy and the philosophy of the Unionists. The union, the anyway. That's another podcast for another time. Which is one of the reasons we can't deal with we haven't healed. But I'm focusing on you healing and understanding the challenges. Now, my Black African friends and my Black Caribbean friends dealt with slavery for much shorter periods of time and more importantly, had role models of nuclear families. Their mom and dad was there. Because the slavery model in the Caribbean and Latin America, et cetera, didn't punish uh, it wasn't commercially brutal in the way I've just described the model in the U.S. And families were oftentimes left together and were able to grow up together, right? And then slavery just didn't last for long, so they were then able to organize their normal communities. Just had less rights and privileges, but they still had a mom and a dad and the nuclear family, and the governor was at some point black, and the prime minister was black, and the dentist was black, and the you know the robber was black, the criminal was black, everybody was black. So you have this sense of belonging and this cultural sort of currency, and so you have higher self-esteem. But because these were not leading economies in the world, you had lower levels of confidence. It wasn't a market economy. It wasn't a leading market economy. The Caribbean nations, the Latin American areas, etc. So so you have blacks, Africans, and black Caribbeans who have higher confidence, a higher self-esteem, and lower confidence, and you have African Americans who have higher confidence and, relatively speaking, lower self-esteem. There's your difference. And let me illustrate how this difference works in real time. So black Africans, black Caribbeans, let me pick on Ethiopia, my Ethiopian brothers and sisters. I stay at the Park Hyatt in Washington, D.C. You see an Ethiopian brother working as the valet. After a couple weeks coming in, I see several other Ethiopians working as valets. And then I see some Ethiopians at the front desk. And then I see an Ethiopian assistant manager. And then I come back and I see there's Ethiopians driving taxis. They're picking up guests. And then I come back and say, "What's going on?" Oh yeah, we figured out this an economic model here. We're working together. And then they've rented an apartment together. They've bought a house together. They've now bought a black car together for Uber or Lyft. They're now trading information, trading opportunities together. They got a little economic mafia going on, positive sense. Um, all the front desk to the curb to transporting throughout the city is now it all an Ethiopian model. And those who are from Africa, the Caribbean, know exactly what I'm talking about, all right? And because they have no problem working together, because self-esteem was not their primary issue, it was a lack of opportunity. You give them 2 or 3 years here, and they're killing it. Now, somebody is going to now still be questioning whether this makes any sense. And for us to have the rest of this conversation, I've got to now deal with the issue of whether black and white. Somebody said, no, no, the real issue is white racism. Well, white racism is a big deal, but it's really just racism and power, really. So blacks and whites worked together in the 1600s as indentured servants. That's true. Blacks and whites were indentured servants together, poor whites from Britain. They worked together, they ran off together. When they came back here, the overseer said, "Boss, we have a problem." They run off together, they become friends. And it's a problem because we can have a race riot, but we cannot have a class riot because we're the class. Right? We got to break this up. And so they caught these runaways and they told the white runaways, "Look, you can't do this again. 2 more years of indentured servitude, and now you're in charge of the blacks. You're white like us." It was the first time the word white, racial word white, was created in 5 billion years of this world. 4 billion years of organism life, a couple 100 million years of Neanderthal life, a couple 100,000 years of modern mankind as you know it, 6,000 years of you want to call it enlightenment, 3,000 years since Christ. The racial word white was created in North America in the 1600s for this reason. You're white like us. Okay. So you're in charge of them. And then they told the blacks, you can't run away again because now you're enslaved for life. That's where slavery began. It was a commercial penalty that separated the poor class, the poor whites, from the poor blacks who were getting along before that. They were friends. So it doesn't sound ridiculous now that poor whites and poor blacks are at each other's throats. That's another conversation for another time. What did Malcolm X say? We've been bamboozled, we've been tricked, we've been hoodwinked, we've been run amok. So uh, here comes this differentiation. But now, if you're poor white, what they didn't say to their overseers was, well, but am I wealthy like you? Do I have titles like you? Do I own property like you? That would have been a different conversation. Never asked because it was a lack of education, lack of high frequency, lack of understanding, and so they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know to answer the question, which speaks to mindset. Right? You go to my book. My last book is Financial Literacy for All. Number one, still in the world on business finance and business economics. Financial Literacy for All. Book before that, Up from Nothing. Book before that, The Memo. And I talk about the five pillars of success. And I talk about the five things you need to be successful, as much education you can shove down your throat. Financial literacy, understand, which is the financial literacy is a civil rights issue of this generation. When you know better, you do better. We live in a capitalist democracy, big C, little d. If you don't believe that, look at the last election cycle. It's about the money. You need family structure and resiliency. You need self-esteem and confidence. Those two things are different. I just described it. You need role models and environment. If you have five of those five things, with all the barriers coming at you, you'll succeed. All the 200 ethnic groups that have come to America, some odd 200 ethnic groups have come to this country, who found those five things or come here with those. So, an obsession about education, understanding how economics and financial literacy work, family structure and resiliency, self-esteem and confidence, role models and environment. No matter what the group is, you had those five things, you killed it. Just do. By the way, don't trust me. Do your own research. Even my Jewish brothers and sisters, this is literally a signal of their success. But Italians, Polish, these were all groups that were called horrible names. They were called Italians were called the N word in the early 20th century, the early 1900s in America. I mean, these were all groups who came from the Irish. All these hard scrabble groups came to America were at the bottom of the social ladder. They needed things like the New Deal created for them so they can come up and the Homestead Act and all that stuff. We don't have time for that in this podcast. But they had these five things. The three groups that don't have these five things, they have really less than the three things: Native American Indians, poor whites, and African Americans. Don't believe me? Do your own research. And it doesn't matter which of these five things that you carve out. As much education you shove down your throat, financial literacy, self-esteem and confidence, role models and environment, family structure and resiliency. If you have three or more of those things, you can kill it. You have three or less of those things, you get killed. Right? And because you don't have the mindset, the tools in order to succeed. And just to prove that race has been a distraction in addition to being a real problem, if this was all about race, then all white people would be wealthy, not having the largest population of poverty in this country being poor white. All right. So the number one group dying in America, I believe it's still true, are high school educated white men dying of opioid addiction, which is really a lack of aspirational success. And the number one group of alcoholism, unfortunately, in this country are Native American Indians. I believe that's still true on Indian reservations. It's depression. And we know that the bottom of the economic pyramid is a group that built the country for free, which are African Americans. Now, let me give you modern data. Federal Reserve issued a study a few years ago in Boston Federal Reserve, and it was on the front page of the Boston Globe. And the front page of Boston Globe said this: Black American net worth, Black net worth, $8. I think it was $7, but anyway, $7 or $8. I don't remember the exact number, but it's okay. You get the point. And it had to say in the headline, "This is not a typo," because they thought no one would believe it. So let's just say it was $7. The net worth, when you read the study, read the article, the net worth of Caribbean blacks in the same study was $1,200. Now, and now the net worth of whites was $100,000 plus. But the point of this is, if racism was the only issue and it would have affected everybody the same and equally, because black is black, no one knows a black African or a black Caribbean from a black American per se when you're chasing them down the street or trying to discriminate against them. You don't say pull out your ID cards and decide how much I'm going to discriminate against you. If it's all the same, then all black struggle should be the same, and that net worth should be all $7 or all $1,200. Can I get an amen? Right? But it wasn't. It was different. And so I want you to understand where we come from so we know how we can go forward together. So um, we need uh, to get on the same page because Africa is our home. Black Americans, in my opinion, should become to Africa, the continent of Africa, what Jews are to Israel, which is a resource. We need to reconnect with our heritage, with our background. I'm wearing right now an African band doing this podcast, and I wear Mandela's prison number here, and I wear these every day. I know that my DNA, I've done a DNA test through African ancestry. I know my DNA is from 71% Cameroon, African, next to Nigeria. I know I'm 26% European. The rest is Asian, Indian, and other, which means whoever I hate, if I decide to hate somebody, I hate myself. And by the way, if you want to mess up somebody's brain who's a racist, give him a DNA test and for him and his family at Christmas, a month before Christmas dinner, and have them open up the test at Christmas dinner and watch the racist passed out on the floor because he might be, in all likelihood, has got some black blood in him. So this racism thing is really stupid, but our misinformation amongst ourselves is unproductive, and we need to knock it off because we actually need to find a pathway together. So the African continent is a gold mine, but we suffer from misinformation about that, and others are taking advantage of that while we're sleeping. Just recently, China had a meeting with a bunch of African leaders while America was bombing a nation in the Middle East. China was cutting a deal with African heads of state because their model is a low cost economic producer, and they realize that Africa is the lowest cost the largest resource of natural resources in the world, and all of the resources in Africa, China needs in order to continue to produce products at a low cost. And one of the growing groups marrying Black African women in all 54 countries, by the way, are Chinese men. And they're not doing it just because they love our women. They're doing it to lock in their economic interests by creating family bonds. That's another podcast when I talk about Africa and China and the world. But I'm trying to get you to understand that we need to heal our pain and why, and it starts with understanding where these differences come from. So let me now talk about uh, who we are and summarize it. Black Africans, descendants of slavery in America, born from struggle, systemically oppressed, but also deeply American, raised within a system that both marginalized and shaped us. We've been doing so much with so little for so long. We can almost do anything with nothing. We have succeeded against all odds, and as a result of that, we're a true north, I believe, for all people of color in the world. Africans, continental Africans, growing up with a sovereignty and identity. However, often under economic instability, political conflict, and colonial hangovers. Pride in ethnic origin and homeland, more likely to come from collectivist cultures versus individualist America, intact family structures, largely. African Caribbeans, often straddling worlds, post colonial struggle, um, diaspora identity, migration stories from there to here meaning America, strong family structures and entrepreneurial spirit, deep cultural resiliency despite limited natural resource bases where they come from, temporarily lacking confidence because they come from a place where these are small island economies, so they need a moment to sort of uh, get their sea legs, no pun intended. Um, we are cousins from different houses. The tragedy is that we don't recognize our family resemblance, but the opportunity lies in learning each other's stories and respecting them. Um, so I hope this was very helpful in understanding where we came from. Let's talk about now the economic power and unity. Black Americans represent about a $1.8 trillion annual consumer spending force. If we were a nation, we'd be one of the largest in the world. Africa is the youngest population in the world, riches in natural resources, as I've already mentioned. The fastest growing group of young people um, and the largest demographic, I believe, in the world are Nigerians. I think that's still true. Caribbean is a gateway to trade, culture, tourism, and policy innovation, and it's 2 hours off of our coast. In some cases, as little as an hour off our coast in America. And there's a side story: without uh, Haiti, there'd be no American story. Um, I'll tell this story very quickly. Um, Haiti was the economic engine for, again, people saying we're stupid and all this stuff. Haiti was the economic engine for France, and it was so important to France as it waged war around the world. Um, uh, France's military leader sent his brother to oversee Haiti. Napoleon sent his brother. Um, Haitians over decided they wanted freedom and uh, did and ran his Napoleon's brother out of Haiti. So Napoleon came, and the only place that's ever beat Napoleon is Haiti. And if Haitians had stopped there and just organized themselves, the story would be different. But they went on a rampage. This is why I say whenever you make an emotional decision, it's a bad one. They went on a rampage and did some really horrible things to French citizens and all that kind of stuff. And they went next door to the DR, Dominican Republic, and did some not so nice things there. This is my opinion, by the way. Some people, I'm sure I'm sure folks are going to be all in the comments from who are Haitians, but I'm giving you a compliment. And at the same time, when they're messing up the economy, that they the economic engine that they were creating, all this money they were shoveling back to France. France was in the negotiation to sell what we now call New Orleans to America, a very young America. But Haiti so crippled the economic engine for France that in an instant, France had to expand from this little place called New Orleans to what was called the Louisiana Purchase, which was more than a dozen American states. At this time, this was the biggest representation of this new country of America. And they only did it because they were desperate because of what happened in Haiti. And now last part is just my opinion. I believe France got so angered by that, having to do that and sell this land to America for pennies on the dollar, by the way, um, uh, that they got so angry they actually organized themselves with other European powers for which they were normally against, and said, "We've got to now put Haiti in a poverty box as a penalty. No one else can rise up against us like this." And they need to be an economic despot for 500 years, which effectively is what's the case. And actually, Haiti had to pay reparations, if you can believe this, back to France. That's a whole nother thing for another time. And by the way, I don't want you getting angry about any of this, right? If you want to find reason to be angry, there are bums in all of our families. There are bums. I call it a bum factor. 20% of black folks are bums. 20% of white folks are bums. 20% of Africans, Caribbeans are bums. 20% of Republicans and Democrats, Europeans, Asians, are bums. There's bums. I got bums in my own family. You don't need to go to place blame. And by the way, there were Africans involved in the slave trade. How do you think people got to the coast? Oh, there were not Native, there were Arabs and Indians and middle people from the Middle East, and of course Europeans involved in the slave trade. So this is not about blame. This is about you understanding your history and repairing it. So, there's your little sideline on the debt we owe, I think, to Haiti, and why I think people like President Bill Clinton and others have been trying to repair Haiti. Haiti's to this day is just a, a a sad and hopefully evolving story, but brilliance have come from Haiti. I know several brilliant businessmen and businesswomen. Harold Charles has an airport named after him in Turks and Caicos Islands. I mean, so many folks expanded, left Haiti and did incredible things once given a level playing field and the tools to be successful. And I'm trying to give you the tools to be successful because I know when the rules are published and the playing field is level, this is a Jesse Jackson quote, where the rules are published and the playing field is level, you kill it, just like we did with the arts and professional sports and church and and politics and the military. When the rules are published and the playing field is level, we succeed. And I'm trying to give you the rules and a level playing field on capitalism and free enterprise. So, where are the possibilities? Black Africans invest in African infrastructure and businesses, fintech, real estate, agriculture, um, trade. African entrepreneurs tap into African American markets and brand power. Um, Everybody using their strength. Caribbean nations become hubs for culture, tourism, and offshore financial centers for global Black prosperity. We have invested in a Caribbean nation, Turks and Caicos, me and my family, and I think this is just so natural to connect with the Caribbean nations and African Americans on your way to. Everybody should go to Africa once a year, in my opinion. You go there for a cultural exchange, find your roots literally, and then go. If you want to do business, you need to go there probably 3 times a year. But you need relationship capital. That's a whole nother video for a podcast for another time. Um, and imagine a black Silicon Valley between Atlanta, Lagos, and Kingston, or uh, you know, Rwanda. My friend, who's the president of Rwanda, has tried to position Rwanda as a Silicon Valley because they're landlocked, and I think he's doing a great job of it. It's like a vision for like Singapore without the water in Africa. There's so many breakout, incredible stories. My friend Stride Masayiwa, who is the Bill Gates of Africa, is the sixth richest man in Africa. Last time I checked, dear friend of mine, met him through Ambassador Young. We become dear friends, and he is. When you bring him in a room, he's the smartest guy in the room. Not no one says he's a black guy. They say he's a brilliant guy who happens to be black. So as we wrap this segment up, and hopefully you've enjoyed this, we need to go from division to collaboration. I need you to educate yourself um, on what you don't know. Read, watch, listen to each other's stories. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you listen twice as much as you talk. All right. Why Quincy Jones? How'd you get so smart? I'm just nosy as hell. He told me. I want to know everything about everything. So stop knowing so much and start listening, be ear hustling, and understand your history. I went and done my research, African ancestry and ancestry.com. If you were enslaved, your history only goes back but so far because you weren't a name, you weren't a family legacy, you were property. Literally, if there's a bank with a 150-year-old history, they have slaves on their books because if they were going to finance a plantation or a farm, that plantation or that farm had assets which include livestock, include the real estate, physical assets, but it also included, unfortunately, slaves were not considered humans; they were considered property. You weren't a human; you were property. And so, you literally, banks are over 150 years old today have slaves on their books. Don't trust me, go do your own research. So, just understand the history and have compassion and empathy for where people have come from and how their stories are different. And let's meet in the middle. Travel, get a passport, visit the motherland, or if you can't, at least the islands. Collaborate. When you get to the islands, do more than party. Collaborate on business, on art, on entrepreneurship, on culture, on trade. Build relationship capital. Start a Pan African economic circle. Invest with intention, if you like. Start a financial literacy circle. Um, Teach your brothers and sisters how this system works. Again, I think this is a civil rights issue of this generation: financial literacy. Heal, acknowledge the trauma, and begin the work of reuniting us with us. If we unify, we're not minorities. We're a global majority with leverage. I've been to 100 countries. I've been to more than 30 countries in Africa, just more than half the countries in Africa. I've been to South Africa pff, more than 40 times. I had offices in South Africa, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, which consider a sort of North Africa, uh, um, and the UAE. But proper Africa, I've been to many African countries, and I just love the Africa. Coach, me and my wife were engaged in South Africa on safari. It just, the earth feels different, the air smells different, the experience will change you. Don't laugh at Africa, love Africa. Understand that it is no laughing matter, that is your, if you're African American, that is your home. Well, it's all of our home, but it's really your home, and it's the missing link. It's why we don't feel complete. We've spent too much time and for too long separated by oceans and pain. It's time to build bridges with our minds, our hearts, and then our money. We want global Black prosperity, not just Black Lives Matter, Black capitalists matter. I want you all to tell your friends about this podcast, which is top 100 or 125 in the world for on Apple platform for business, and top 50 in the US for entrepreneurship. It's also top on every continent, including the African continent, the South Africa in particular, in the UK, for Europe. Chile for Latin America, Saudi Arabia for the Middle East. Uh, I'm sure I miss Hong Kong for Asia. This is a global conversation. We're all in this together. Where this country in this world is going to live or die, prosper or not, based on how we embrace each other and find our common similarities with our versus our very uninteresting differences and find common ground. But we need to understand the what, the why, the where, so we can figure out the destination of how we all get there together. This is John Hope Bryant. This is Money and Wealth, the Black Effect Network podcast episode in season 2. Um, and tell your friends to go to Operation Hope, get your coaching and counseling. We're the largest financial literacy coaching organization in America, 1,500 offices in 40 plus states. We're the only organization allowed to operate inside of a bank branch, getting the bank out of the no business, back in the yes business, moving people up and out of poverty at scale, getting your credit score up, your debt down, your savings up so the bank can say yes because the bank just wants a good loan. The bank's not discriminating against you today because you're black. It might have been 40, 50, 100 years ago for sure when the bank was privately owned by some racist family. But now, everybody owns some stock in money center banks. If you're in the stock market, these banks just want to make good loans, and I want them to make a good loan to you. So I want to get your credit score up to 700, so the bank just says yes, like they did to my mother, so you can become a homeowner, a small business owner, an entrepreneur, so you can send your kids to college, so that you can travel and get an expansive experience, so you can get a good job, either writing it, either cashing a check, or create a business and write a check, so that you build wealth at scale. This is a civil rights movement, from civil rights to civil rights, from civil rights to silver rights, from the streets to the suites. This is an ownership agenda, and you can participate in it. You can be a positive force in this world, and you don't have to hate on anybody else to do it. Hate actually is a problem if you do it. Dr. King once said that hate and evil have within it the seeds of their own destruction. I'm paraphrasing what Dr. King said. So don't hate on somebody else. That may ricochet back on you, because thoughts are things. To rationalize is to tell rational lies, and disease is often dis-ease. And you die at 61 years of age if you have a 500 credit score with a surviving mindset. You don't even get to Social Security age, which is 65, I believe. But if you have a thriving and winning mindset, a building mindset, you're optimistic, you believe in opportunity and potential, and you get your credit score up to 700, you live to 81 years of age or better, and now you can live the American dream for yourself and expand your legacy on for others. Let us now be a light for the world, a light for the world. Let's continue this work that we're all in. The world actually needs us. America cannot succeed unless Black and brown people do. Yes, you heard that here. And we need to embrace our poor white brothers and sisters. We need to embrace our Native Americans, our Asian, our Indian, women. I need white folks to succeed, right? If you're proper and if you mean well, I'm with you 100%. We need everybody to come up, because if you live in America, your enemy is not a black or a white person next to you, or a Republican or a Democrat. There are 4 countries trying to take you out: Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China. They want your way of life, but they can't get in a fair fight. They need for you to argue with each other and get into fist fights. And everybody wants to be an American but Americans. Yes, I said it. Capitalism and democracy are horrible systems, except for every other system. Let's stop trying to do the perfect. Let's just get this system that we have here, that's as imperfect as it is, and created slavery that I am a long descendant from. My second great grandfather was a slave. George Young fought in the Union Army for the Emancipation Proclamation. My grandfather, R.B. Smith, was a sharecropper. My second great grandmother, my mother's side, was also a slave. So I know where I come from. My mother grew up in a shotgun shack in East St. Louis. Juanita Smith, God rest her soul. But I'm not going to harbor on that. I'm not going to hate on that. I'm going to spend my time wrestling with that. I'm going to move up and out, because I am God's child. And this is the rainbow after this storm. I'm out. John Hope Bryant. I see the finish line.